For today's project, I'm going to create this artwork of brightly coloured bird friends sitting together on a twig. To achieve this look, I used coloured pencil layered over highlighter marker pens. I've used a similar technique in another video I did called Glowing Undertones. In that video, I used oil pastel over the fluorescent highlighter colour and then scratched back into the surface. I'll put the link to that video below in the description. Also down there in the description is a link to the worksheets that accompany this video. If you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know that I like making colour mixing reference charts. This is the one I made for this artwork. One of the worksheets down there in the description is a blank reference chart for you to fill in. If you can't print that chart, I recommend at least drawing up a little tester page so that you have an idea of how your particular materials layer over each other, because everyone's materials are going to be different and behave differently to mine. For my colour inspiration, I looked at the work of Australian landscape painter Kate Shaw, and she paints these brilliantly vibrant, abstract landscapes. And so I used her colour palette as the inspiration for my birds. To begin drawing these birds, I have reduced them to basic ovals and circles. This template is one of the worksheets down in the video description, but I'll leave it on the screen for you to refer to. If you're finding it difficult to draw these shapes correctly, you might like to trace them from the worksheet. If you can't print the worksheet, you can do what I do and put a piece of paper over your device screen, turn your lights off and trace it that way. I do recommend having a go at drawing it freehand because it is good practice and it does improve your drawing skills. But at the same time, if you find something so frustrating it stops you from trying it at all, then I think it's okay to take a shortcut. I'm just starting by laying out the shapes, the body shapes of the bird, and working from that worksheet to figure out where each of the bodies go and which angle they go on. Just press lightly at this stage because you're going to want to erase these pencil lines. So really look at those shapes and work out which direction each oval is facing, where the head shape is placed on that oval. And some of the head shapes are different kind of ovals, aren't they? This one's quite a flat oval. This one's quite a round oval. Now I'm going to start filling in the bodies. And this is also on the worksheet. So it's just a matter of joining up the two shapes together and adding some features. I'm not going to make these birds too complicated. I'm going to keep their wings and tails quite simple because it's really the colour of this project that I want to stand out. Next, I'm going to put the twig in that the birds are all sitting on. And so that I don't get confused, I'm going to erase anywhere that the bird lines are intersecting the twig, because the bodies of the bird are supposed to be behind the twig. So when I go to fill this in with felt tip, I just want to make sure that I don't go over that twig. And now I'll just put their little feet in. Now I'm going to go over these major outlines in a black pen. I've got a fine liner here, but if you've got a regular black biro, just use what you have. Remembering when we go over these birds is to not cross over this twig because the bodies of the birds are behind the twig. So whenever I get to that twig, I want to make sure that I don't go over it. Put the feet in as well. Next, I'm going to take out all that pencil line Now I'm using my highlighters to go over and colour in my birds. Just use whatever colours you have, but if you don't have any highlighters, you could use regular textures and markers, but just make sure the colours are quite light, so your light yellows, light greens, light blues, that kind of thing. Don't forget when you're colouring in your birds not to colour in the stick. I want the stick to remain white. Now my birds are all filled in with the highlighter pen, and they're pretty bright and they're pretty bold. You might want to leave it like that. You might love it. I do not. So I'm going to take some coloured pencils, these ones here, and I'm going to work back into the birds with some nice gentle shading of coloured pencils, and I'm going to build up the shade over the top of that fluorescent colour to knock it back a bit and make it so that it kind of glows through from underneath but is not the most dominant thing on the page. I'm just trying to take advantage of the way fluorescent colours have a natural kind of shine, but I sort of don't want them to look like fluorescent colours, if that makes sense. I don't want them to look like I've just taken an Office brand highlighter and coloured my birds in. So I'm working very similar kind of colours on top of the colour. So for that pink, I've chosen a darker pink. So I still have that nice kind of glow in coming through of the pink underneath. And it's still very bright, but it's a bit more, has a bit more depth. And don't forget to stop on the stick, so don't colour in the stick. I want the stick to stay white. And use this opportunity to try and shape your bird. So if you imagine these birds are rounded, actually shade in the direction of that shape, and that gives them a bit of form as well, a bit of three-dimensional shape. I'll take an orange and go over that orange. So I'm pressing a little bit harder along the edge, and as I go to the middle, I'm lightening up my touch so that I don't put as much colour on. So in the middle section, this highlighting orange will show through a bit more, but at the same time, I'm suggesting roundness and form on that wing by going dark to light. A smooth graduation of tone from dark to light will suggest form. Something to also consider is your light source. So if I'm looking at these birds, I'm imagining that the light is coming from above. And so these lower areas are going to be darker. And then as I move to the top, I won't put as much pressure on to suggest that the light source is the sun coming from up above. Might add a little bit of red down here to deepen those shadows a bit. And down here on the bottom tail. Now I'm going to work into this yellow section with this light green. So again, I'm thinking about the light source. So if I imagine the light is coming from here, this point down here will be darker. And then as I move up to this area, I lighten my touch, trying to suggest the roundness of the bird's chest, and that up here is going to be lighter than here. Just keep working at it and adding to the layers. Now I'm going to work over these areas in a blue pencil. So it's the same green highlighter underneath, but I'm going to differentiate these sections by using a different coloured pencil over the top of it. Now I'm going to go in with my white pencil. Might be a bit hard to see on camera there, but I'm just taking the white pencil into some areas to add a bit of pastel relief. And I'm again looking for the areas where I think the light would be hitting the birds, so the tops of their heads on this side. So adding this white pencil over the top has the effect of just softening the areas a little bit, adding a bit of pastel and blending the highlights. The last step in my bird picture is I'm going to fill in that background. Now I have these double-ended markers. These are not actually that expensive. These ones came from Officeworks if you're in Australia, and they were pretty reasonable priced, but obviously not everyone's going to have these, so you could use whatever colouring materials you have to fill in the background. I'm going to put quite a dark colour in this top section and a lighter colour in the bottom, but just use what you have. Maybe you've got some watercolour paint, some acrylic paint. You maybe even are able to cut these out and put them onto a coloured paper. And this is where I'm going to make sure I'm just going to lightly rub out this stick so I can sort of still see it. So when I'm putting my marker pen in, I know where to stop. So I want that stick to remain white in the image as like a highlight. I've also left their beaks white as another highlight. It's nice when you've got these images with lots and lots of colours in them to have a few pops of white to stand out. So I can still see that twig pretty much. Now I'm going to go around the edge. The colours you choose for your background are entirely up to you. In fact, the colours you choose for any of it are entirely up to you. You don't have to do exactly what I've done here. If you're unsure about what colours to put on, you could do what I'm doing here and draw some colours on a scrap piece of paper and hold it against your image so you can see what works best for you before you commit to putting it on your artwork. When you're using these alcohol markers, the more layers you put on, the darker the colours will become. Just be patient and precise doing this final step and don't try to rush it. Your end result will always be better if you take your time.